Dean Carey was a paramedic with 8 years of experience working at East Midlands Ambulance Service. The night of 28th of June 2020, he answered a call for a female patient with difficulty breathing. On arrival, he found the patient in a drunken state and initially refuses to be seen by Mr. Carey. Her principal complaint was of tightness in her chest. On observation, he treated the patient for hyperventilation caused by a panic attack. After collecting 2 rounds of observation, his offer to perform an ECG was declined due to the patient no longer complaining of any chest pain. Spending 2 hours on scene with the patient and her partner, he decided not to transport after providing reassurance and working to calm her breathing.
Later that day, he messaged the patient on social media with information about a Facebook group. She responded thanking him for the information.
Following this interaction, for the next 9 weeks, they continued to message and made multiple video calls. These messages include personal and sexual content, although they never resulted in any in-person meetings. In September, Mr. Carey and the patient ended communication after his partner discovered these messages and wanted to stop communication, threatening to report him to his employer. As a result, Mr. Carey blocked the patient and there was no longer any further contact between them. The patient spoke to a counselor about the situation and later made a complaint to the East Midlands Ambulance Service, where in July 2022, following a disciplinary hearing, Mr. Carey was dismissed from his employment at the East Midlands Ambulance Service.
The official allegations of the case were that on or around 28th of June 2020, after having attended Service User A's house in the capacity as a paramedic, Mr. Carey used Service User A's name to find her on social media. Between around 28th of June 2020 and 20th September 2020, Mr. Carey did not maintain appropriate professional boundaries in relation to Service User A. Between around 28th of June 2020 and 20th of September 2020, Mr. Carey engaged in video calls with Service User A at times when he was at work as a paramedic. It was found that Dean Carey's conduct in relation to allegations 1 and 2 was sexually motivated. The matters set out in allegations 1 to 5 amount to misconduct, and by reason of the registrant's misconduct, his fitness to practice as a paramedic is impaired. Following this, a disciplinary hearing was held where Mr. Carey was suspended for 6 months at the date of the order, as it was determined that despite his actions to impose a more restrictive sanction of striking off would be unnecessary and disproportionate to the facts of the case. It was noted that striking off should be reserved for cases where there were no other way to protect the public, and in this case the panel determined that the proportionate level of public protection would be achieved by the lesser sanction of a suspension order. As we have already discussed, further sanctions and the possibility of Mr. Carey being struck off were not considered, as it was determined that it would be disproportionate to the facts of the case, despite him being in violation of the UK Sexual Offences Act 2003 and the Data Protection Act 2018. Similar issues would arise if the registrant was a paramedic working in Queensland. However, it is likely that if Mr. Carey was a Queensland paramedic, he would have been struck off due to him being in violation of numerous laws. The registrant's actions would also constitute professional misconduct under Health Practitioner Regulation National Law, Queensland, leading to the registrant's suspension or deregistration by the Paramedicine Board of Australia and APRA. These guidelines outline the prohibition of a health practitioner, in this case a paramedic, from engaging in any form of relationship with patients or clients, as it poses a significant safety issue. Finding A's name on social media after attending her house concerns the breach of privacy of the Privacy Act 1988 and Australian privacy principles. It also interferes with the paramedic's confidentiality obligations and violates the paramedic code of conduct for contacting a patient. The registrant's conduct would not only violate legal and ethical standards, but it would also affect the way the public eye perceives the paramedic profession while degrading and causing distrust in the healthcare profession.
In Mr. Carey's case, some of the 4 principles of bioethics are seen to be lacking when examining his actions. The principle of beneficence is defined as the ethical duty of physicians to act in the patient's best interest. Although the patient may have initially reciprocated, the behavior seen in Mr. Carey sets a precedence of misuse of patient information and abuse of the public's trust. The principle of non-maleficence is the idea that a physician has an obligation not to harm the patient, and this extends beyond the physical. Violating your code of conduct or acting in a way that is not suited for your profession, for example, can also harm the patient or those around them.
The proposed outcome of this case under Queensland law supports patient safety by maintaining the high ethical and moral standard that paramedics must be held to, as stated in the Public Sector Ethics Act 1994. Patients must trust that their healthcare providers will act in their best interests and maintain appropriate relationships. The breach of these boundaries can lead to a loss of trust in the healthcare system and may discourage patients from seeking help. By ensuring proper use of patient information, this outcome upholds the APRA Code of Conduct, where health professionals are responsible to maintain confidentiality and privacy for all patients and their information, as well as maintaining public trust and safety in healthcare professionals and upholding the integrity of the healthcare system. The registrant's conduct would likely be determined by relevant authorities such as the Queensland Health Ombudsman and the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency. The possible outcomes for this case would be a suspension or cancellation of registration, the latest being the most likely outcome in Queensland. As health professionals, we need to ensure patient safety and their trust. Allowing practitioners to keep working after offences like this would disregard all principles we must maintain and breach the trust put in them. By cancelling the registration, we ensure the public is aware offences like this are not tolerated, that their safety and trust is prioritised above all.